Cluster sampling is a probability sampling technique where researchers divide the population into multiple groups and then randomly select some of these clusters as a sample for research. The clusters should ideally each be mini representations of the population. There are three types of clustering, which is single-stage sampling, double-stage sampling, and multi-stage sampling. Cluster sampling used when studying large population, particularly those that are widely geographically dispersed, typically use pre-existing units such as schools or cities as their cluster.
Now we move to the requirement for cluster sampling. Cluster elements should be as heterogeneous as possible. Each cluster should be mutually exclusive. In other words, it should be impossible for each cluster to occur together. In the text example, it would be impossible for Perlis, Texas and Kedah, Texas to occur together, so it fits the requirements for mutual exclusivity.
How to cluster sampling? The simplest form of cluster sampling is single-stage cluster sampling. It's about 4 steps. Step 1, define the population. Step 2, divide sample into cluster based on specific criteria. Step 3, randomly select cluster to use as sample. And step 4, collect data from the final sample group. Second, multi-stage cluster sampling. It's randomly select individual units from within the cluster to use as sample. It's known as double-stage sampling. This method used when it is infeasible or too expensive to test the entire cluster.
The next one is the advantages of cluster sampling. The first one is very efficient. It is time and cost efficient, especially for samples that are widely geographically spread and will be difficult to properly sample otherwise. The second one is high reliability because cluster sampling uses randomization. If the population is clustered properly, your study will have high external validity because your sample will reflect the characteristic of the larger population. Next is the disadvantages. The internal validity is less strong than with simple random sampling, particularly as you use more stages of clustering. Second one is difficult to be implemented. The last one is high sampling error. Cluster sampling is much more complex to plan than other form of sampling.